Hello, everybody, and welcome to the special edition of Facebook Live from Avian Specialty Inks. Today, we're going to do a little bit of a holiday shirt with the Aquarius Discharge ink. So here's our final goal right there. So we're just going to show you how to use the discharge ink from Aquarius, and hopefully you can create some of your own special holiday shirts. Just follow along. Thanks. First, we have to mix the colors. Simply look up the Pantone color in the IMS3 software under the discharge base and mix your colors. You won't be activating them yet. You want to save those for later, right before you print. Simply stir in the pigments, which, by the way, are the same pigments you use for high solids, discharge, soft base, high mesh base, and any future bases we may be coming out with. Then you simply store these inks with the lid closed until it's time to activate. Now, to activate, we bring these inks back out. We use one of the containers to tear out the weight. And then you put your mix onto the scale and it tells you exactly how much ink you've mixed. Using a calculator, you get the amount and you multiply by 0.06 to give you the amount of activator you'll need to mix into the mix. Tear out your scale again. Simply start adding the amount designated. Zero in on the amount, and once you do that, you don't really start stirring hard. You want to kind of fold the ink around the powder. If you start mixing too vigorously, you can send the powder up in the air. It's not good to breathe. It's not good to lose that amount out of your mix. So I'm just basically folding it into the ink, and I give it a pretty good stir. You don't have to do a complete stir. I want to make sure that the ink is enveloping all of the activator. So when it sits for the next 15 minutes, the activator is dissolving into the ink, and we're going to have a complete mix. Put the lid back on, and I like to write down the time in which I've mixed it. So I know when I go on press, I'll know that it's been at least 15 minutes since I've mixed the activator. I always like to identify the last mix I made to make sure I'm putting it in the screen last. So when it's time to put it in the screen, I bring it back out and I actually give this now a very vigorous stir. I'm getting all the sides. I want to make sure I'm scraping the bottom. I want a complete mix. And it's much easier to mix now. You are not going to see any granules in the ink. The worst thing someone can do is put the ink in right after they activate it. It's kind of like putting sandpaper in your screen. If you ever had any problems in your screen of it breaking down right away with discharge, is probably what's happening. So when I pour it in, I want to make sure that I'm avoiding the image area to kind of buy me some time if I'm putting all the inks in at once. But eventually, when you line it up, I like to put it on a white garment so I can see my registration marks. And then I'll go right in. We'll flood up all of the screens. And I set the rotation to be dark to light, mainly because the darker colors will have less chance to attach itself to the back of the screen at some point during the long run. Also, we're not using any flash units. It's cold palettes. And we're going wet on wet every time. All these inks are set up through a 160 mesh and about 40 pounds to 45 pounds of pressure. One flood, one stroke. But the single stroke and the no flashes, it really eliminates a lot of problems a lot of people have with water base. namely ink drying out in the screens because of the flash or the hot palettes, and also the speed in which you can run a job is increased by single stroke. As you can see, we set these screens up right next to each other to show you that you don't necessarily need this large machine to run discharge. In fact, you can run these on very small machines since there's no flash units. So discharge ink works on cotton fabric. So by using 100% cotton fabric in this case, and this with dischargeable dyes in the fabric, you're able to get full color on the garment. Any shirt that has any kind of cotton blend or cotton involved in its construction will have a reaction. Obviously, the less cotton you have, the less reaction you'll have, but you will still be there. It's very interesting to see when a 50-50 is discharged or a tri-blend is discharged. In fact, sometimes they come out very nicely, sometimes they look like heather, and sometimes they just look like a distressed look. As with any water-based ink, it's very important to get full exposure to heat. In this case, we run it about 335 in our oven. That brings us to 330 degrees Fahrenheit. And we keep it in the can for about 90 seconds. This is much quicker than many of our competitors, and it saves you time and money and energy savings. So you can see we have a nice reaction. Well, I hope our presentation was helpful. Enjoy your holidays and see you in 2021. Thanks.